Professor, you are part of a political actors dialogue known as Polad. May you briefly explain to us what it is all about, its legal backing, its significance, and what it seeks to achieve in our land?
Okay, thank you. I think first there are several things coming out, and they're very important things. First, what is Polad all about? Polad is all about entrenching a democracy. That's what Polad is all about. A democracy is about entertaining various and divergent views. A democracy operates from the premise that no two individuals are the same. You share different views from my views, but we belong to one political entity. So in that political entity, when we want that entity to move, we exchange ideas. And one of the elements is that many people would want to lead this country, either as MPs or councillors or presidents. And our constitution says you determine who runs the country on the basis of an election. But as soon as an election has taken place, the person who would have won the election has a term, 5 years in the case of the president. He is not supposed to run the country purely and exclusively on his own ideas. He is allowed by our system to engage those that seem to be also interested in politics and say, can we from time to time exchange views? Can we from time to time, hear from you at a closer range what you think? And I'm doing so, that I'm speaking on behalf of the winner. I'm doing so because we were in a race together. You also wanted to be president, but you failed because you didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
So you are losers. I am the winner. But as a winner, I would want to work with losers. So Polad is a platform where the winner interacts with the losers during the 5-year term to get ideas where possible, to get criticisms where possible, within that close range. And that's what would happen. So he would, in the Polad, it's called political actors dialogue. The word dialogue there simply means interaction.
Okay.
That's what it means. But I think because we use the word dialogue, there are people who thought that a dialogue is a process where you discuss power sharing, where you discuss things like that, where do you discuss political disputes. It's not that. Political disputes are dealt with elsewhere. If you have a dispute, you go to a court and so on, or you do it else. But in this interaction, it's actually to be discussing issues to move the country forward.
Okay.
That's what Polad is.
But I like you mentioned the word loser, but I would love to use the word the people aspiring president who couldn't have the chance to be leading this nation. From the dialogue, from the conversations you are making in the House, is there room for implementations of such conversations, or maybe it's just a picture that is being portrayed to the nation at large?
There is a lot of room for implementation. What is lacking at the moment is actually to publicize out there Polad meetings, Polad discussions, Polad recommendations, and then follow them through and say, this recommendation was made, it was implemented here. And there I blame the government for not going forward. The moment they will accept, I think coming from what the public has been keeping on saying, the moment they accept that they need to tell the public what it is that has been discussed and what it is that has been taken, what it is that has not been taken, then people begin to appreciate. So let's be clear there that not everything said in Polad is accepted by government. Then not everything said in Polad is rejected. In other words, so there are certain things that are actually accepted. And I can give you examples that, let's take the current pandemic and so forth. In Polad meetings, and I remember the first meeting when we were discussing the lockdown issues and so forth, the push to get a lockdown, that first hard lockdown that came in, it was a Polad discussion. One of our medical persons in Polad was the leader of the political parties, Dr. Dana. I remember him actually telling the president what it would take to get us out of the coronavirus pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had that meeting and so forth. So I would not say that the president already had ideas on having a lockdown. and then you have that massive exchange in how you go about it. Get the issue to do with the vaccination. It is not an accident that Polad leaders were vaccinated long back in March 2021. You get Polad leaders vaccinated. I couldn't myself go to Vic Falls because I had a funeral. But the moment I came back from the funeral, I went for my own vaccination, not through the Polad. The people went with the president, Victoria Falls, and they went to the second jab in Kwekwe. Because I had a different program, I then followed my own. But as we speak now, all Polad leaders were vaccinated long back in, so by beginning of May, we all had our second jabs. What does that take? It was a decision that let's lead from the front. Okay. Let's say, and then the political parties who were not in Poland, up to now, I have not seen a photo of Chamisa getting a jab. I have not seen a photo of Tendai Biti having a jab. Nothing. I have seen some pictures, I think now, Wendy and others. I mean, these are latecomers. These are people who were actually, first not coming out to encourage vaccination. Secondly, we have not seen them vaccinated. The point I'm making is very clear. Polad is not just a useless talk shop, as you might. There are so many decisions. So I've given to do with the pandemic. There was a Polad economic summit that took place, I think sometime, last year. We came up with recommendations. It took place, was launched there. And many of the recommendations that came up, some already the Ministry of Finance and the Reserve Bank already had their own ideas. But they were strengthened a lot with measures that were coming from there. And the chairperson of our committee called Trust Cohort was, in forefront in our meetings, presenting a document showing what. Then I come to a committee that I lead in Poland, which has to do with, it's called Governance Legislative Agenda. We lost out on the constitution. Poland had pushed for a situation where we would not push the amendment number 2. We failed on that. I'm thinking I'm on record criticizing amendment number 2. Even people getting confused that I said this is completely unacceptable, the passing of amendment number 2, etc. But then when I went to represent my client called Max Mpungu, who then was actually pushing for the Chief Justice position, to be clear, they thought I was contradicting myself. That's the earlier point we made in our discussions and so forth. But that's a different matter. In answering you, I would say that the weakness of Polad is not publicizing its positions. But Polad knows its place. It's a platform to exchange ideas. It is not the government. The government takes 90% of all the decisions that are affecting the country. And I think that about 10% of those would be decisions influenced by Polad. And I'm sure there are also decisions influenced by others. Governance and ideas that run this country, they are not monopolized by the government of the day. Okay. So even you yourself, Victor, as an individual, you have a very brilliant idea. You can throw it to the president. I mean, now you have Twitter, you have emails, you can even write your own letter and say, I am Victor, I'm a law student, now finishing my first year and so forth. But Mr. President, I have this idea. I'm a Zimbabwean. And you make that go to. That's the country we want to produce. And thinking from what you said, I've used the word losers. You said those people that couldn't make it, which is perhaps a more polite way of putting it across. But this country does not belong to its winners, or we win an election. This country does not belong to the big political parties. This country belongs to everyone. And I know that some people say, you have small political parties and so on. Parties don't remain small. They were small in 2018, but they may become bigger. But it's not about the size of a political party. It is the size of the ideas that you put on the table. That's what politics is all about.